Alternative Media here, and welcome to another WAM News live show. And we're going to go a little bit quicker this time than usual, although I say that quite often and it doesn't end up being the case. But we're going to try our best because there is some breaking news today, and I wanted to get to a few different stories here, but I also have to run soon. I got lots to do while I'm here in Canada. But anyway, I'm going down to the United States right away, and we will be taking part in some very interesting, to say the least, investigations in multiple different countries. And I will be updating you on all of that very soon. I see James Cephas says hello to you as well. Horror Breakdown says hi, Josh. Laura says hi, Josh. Keisha Rhinestone says hi, Josh. JRM O'Brien says awesome. Hi to all of you. Hi, and awesome, I agree. So we will get to some of the breaking news today because, again, there's no shortage of it. So starting it off, again, I want to let everyone know as I go into all of this that what I do is I open them up, I do the report live, and then I end the report, and then I cut it, and then I continue talking to all of you. So don't go away once I close off the live report. You get to see me possibly screw up multiple times. It's the good side of doing all of this live. So anyway, I'm going to get everything set up here. But before we get to anything, any of the stories, I do want to alert everyone to our Subscribe Star page, which we will soon be doing subscriber-only content for. And I really appreciate any help we can get as we are heavily shadow banned. And we're reaching 1% to 2% of our audience on average, which is just crazy. And I mean, we can see that right now, actually. Like if you look at the view rate on YouTube, 26 people watching out of 115,000 people. So again, good times. Anyway, I am going to load up the video or the news stories here for us to go into, and then I will be off. Again, don't go away when I close off the report. I will still be here. Anyway. So, breaking news today, as you see the CNBC article here, Nike stock dips after Avenatti tweets of scandal, recovers after celebrity lawyer is arrested. That's right, arrested. Michael Avenatti has been arrested. We have this other article here from CNBC. Stormy Daniels' ex-lawyer, Michael Avenatti, arrested for alleged $20 million extortion scheme against Nike, embezzling clients' money, defrauding a bank. And, of course, this article out of Fox News says Michael Avenatti accused of trying to extort Nike for up to $25 million, feds say. Now, let's go into this article a little bit, and then we shall elaborate. And by the way, before we get any further, I should mention Michael Avenatti, of course, as many know him, like Tucker Carlson, as a creepy porn lawyer, was really pushing hard to expose Trump for apparently sleeping with a porn star, Stormy Daniels, and of course, the guy is known to be a bit of a weasel, to say the least. He is very much involved in what some would say many schemes and attempts to make himself famous, put himself at the forefront of the news, and of course he's been accused of multiple things by women as well. So that's not a sign of a good guy to represent someone who wasn't even allegedly abused, but openly and by her own admittance just slept with Donald Trump. And I don't really care anyway. It's all so stupid. But let's get to this article here. Federal prosecutors in New York Monday accused Michael Avenatti, the former attorney for porn star Stormy Daniels, of operating an old-fashioned shakedown by trying to extort between $15 and $25 million from sports apparel giant Nike. Avenatti, who briefly considered a bid for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, was also charged with wire fraud and bank fraud in a separate case out of California. He was taken into custody and expected to appear in court later Monday in New York. Prosecutors say Avenatti tried to extort Nike by threatening to use his ability to garner publicity to inflict substantial financial and reputational harm on the company if his demands were not met. As alleged, Michael Avenatti approached Nike last week with a list of financial demands in exchange for covering up allegations of misconduct on behalf of the company. FBI Assistant Director in Charge William Sweeney Jr. said in a statement, the lofty price tag included a $1.5 million payoff for Avenatti's client and upwards of tens of millions of dollars for the legal services of his firm. Services Nike never requested. This is nothing more than a straightforward case of extortion, he says. The counts against Avenatti in the New York case are extortion, transmission of interstate communications with intent to extort, conspiracy to transmit interstate communications with intent to extort, and conspiracy to commit extortion. He faces up to 47 years in prison if convicted on all charges. Talk about a downfall, guys. I mean, this is crazy. At a press conference Monday, Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey S. Berman said that Avenatti used illegal tactics and threats in an effort to obtain millions of dollars for himself. He claimed that if Nike did not meet his demands, the company might die. When lawyers use their law licenses as weapons, as a guise to extort payments for themselves, they are no longer acting as attorneys, Berman said. They are acting as criminals and they will be held responsible for their conduct. According to the New York complaint against him, Avenatti and an unidentified co-conspirator met with attorneys for Nike on March 19th and threatened to release damaging information if the company did not agree to make multi-million-dollar payments to them, as well as an additional $1.5 million payment to a client Avenatti claimed to represent. He allegedly told the attorneys that if his demands were not met, he would go take $10 billion off your client's market cap. I'm not effing around, he says, apparently. The complaint said Avenatti threatened to hold a news conference on the eve of Nike's quarterly earnings call and the start of the NCAA tournament to announce allegations of misconduct by Nike employees. The co-conspirator was identified as an attorney licensed to practice in the state of California and is similarly known for representation of celebrity and public figure clients. Meanwhile, the alleged client was identified as a coach for an amateur athletic union men's basketball program based in California. Earlier Monday, Avenatti tweeted he would be holding a press conference Tuesday to disclose a major high school college basketball scandal perpetrated by Nike that we have uncovered. This criminal conduct reaches the highest levels of Nike and involves some of the biggest names in college basketball, apparently, as he said, I believe on Twitter, as it shows there. Meanwhile, at a second press conference in California, federal authorities announced additional criminal charges against the lawyer for a separate matter. In that case, Avenatti was accused of embezzling a client's money to pay his own expenses and debts, as well as those of his coffee business and law firm. And as it goes on, United States Attorney Nick Hanna said Avenatti was charged with wire fraud and tax fraud stemming from a 2-year IRS tax investigation after he allegedly obtained bank loans on false terms by using phony tax returns to obtain millions of dollars in loans. Avenatti is a corrupt lawyer, as this quote says. Avenatti is a corrupt lawyer who instead fights for his own selfish interests, Hanna said, adding that the allegations against the attorney paint an ugly picture of lawlessness and greed. Avenatti became famous as a lawyer for Stormy Daniels, the porn actress who alleged she had an affair with President Trump in 2006 while his wife Melania was pregnant with the couple's son, Barron. In the last year, Daniels and Avenatti became household names in their fight against Trump, dominating cable news shows for months and taunting the president in interviews, and making lots of money along the way, if I may add. But as this tweet out of from Stormy Daniels said, her statement regarding Michael Avenatti. She says, knowing what I know about Michael Avenatti, I am saddened but not shocked by news reports that he has been criminally charged today. I made the decision more than a month ago to terminate Michael's services after discovering that he had dealt with me extremely dishonestly, and there will be more announcements to come. I ask that the media respect my decision to withhold further public comment regarding Mr. Avenatti at this time. Yeah, and she had expressed some concern as well with the allegations against him previously. And before Avenatti began representing Daniels in February 2018, he was virtually unknown outside of the California legal community, but in a matter of months, he had become known as a no-holds-barred lawyer with a media style and a penchant for tweeting similar to Trump's. Avenatti had toyed with the 2020 presidential run as a Democrat. He even visited Iowa at one point, but ultimately ruled that out. He was also involved in another high-profile case representing dozens of parents whose children were separated from them at the U.S. border as a result of the Trump's administration's immigration policies. More recently, he's been representing women who said they were sexually abused by R&B star R. Kelly. And in the California case, Avenatti faces up to 50 years in prison, while in the New York case, the charges carry a potential penalty of 47 years in prison. Hannah said they coordinated with prosecutors in New York to execute both arrest warrants at the same time, but emphasized that they were two separate cases that happened to coincide. And of course, this all happens at the same time as this Russian investigation becomes known more and more as a hoax, as the Mueller investigation has concluded there's no collusion, which Avenatti had been pushing for a long time as well. It's all seemingly coming down on these people. All these so-called these virtue signaling leftists that claim that they're doing what's best for people and women and people of color and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, screwing anyone they can to make a few dollars and utilizing a popular trend in culture today to make a bunch of money. And he's just scheming. He's dirty. He's not a good person. And anyone that hadn't seen this previously, it just amazes me. How do you not see through these people? They're like the bad guys out of primetime television. It's ridiculous. And of course, Avenatti has been involved in multiple cases before. I believe he was also like race car driving for a while back, anything to make a few extra dollars. And it's just interesting to see him utilize his position to basically, essentially steal people's money. Again, I don't think he's going to be practicing anymore. He might get a Michelle Obama in his face, basically, you aren't going to practice anymore, and he might spend much of the rest of his life in prison, though we will see. He has big donors, but I'm pretty sure they're going to throw him under the bus at this point, considering all that's come up. And I don't understand how he got involved in another case with like R. Kelly and stuff like that. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, the guy has been accused of doing terrible things to women himself, so I don't even... It's 2019, guys. I feel like Justin Trudeau, because it's 2019. Because, like, really, it's just... The present year is basically the answer to most questions these days. Because it's a crazy world we live in, and I don't know where it's going to end, and I don't think it's going to end anywhere good anytime soon. But nonetheless, it is good to see one person at least get exposed. And look, I'm no fan of Nike. I'm certainly not a fan of Nike. But again, more of these virtue signalers are getting exposed for the scam artists that they are. And all these are allegations at this point, but it looks like he is going to be facing some huge, huge charges. Again, I'm not sure he's going to be facing the entire prison sentence, as some articles note. But nonetheless, he is in big trouble, folks. And I just kind of have to laugh and scoff a little bit at this continued exposure of all these people. It's one of the reasons, like, look, politics is a circus. It's all theater. It's all nonsense. But watching all these people get exposed is like the only good side to, asking or begging for one of these organized crime figures to become the next puppet master or puppet on the world stage, pushing the U.S. empire. I just find it interesting because every single time it always turns out one of these guys is involved in this thing, this guy's involved in this thing, and then they throw mud at each other and complete hypocrisy, and then lawyers get involved and huge media propaganda spectacles and distractions come up out of nowhere. And regarding the Mueller story, it's something I've just kind of looked the other way on for a while because it's so ridiculous and so absurd and so obviously a distraction story, and also meant to coax fears and fear-mongering regarding Russia and hoping to push towards war with Russia, which is I don't think anyone really wants, but of course the media will do whatever they can to push more WMD type stories. But again, all this is seemingly getting exposed at the exact same time. And Michael Avenatti, it looks to me, cross your fingers, guys, that his career is over. Good riddance. Goodbye, sir. Hope to never hear from you again, except for the odd story out of prison. Michael Avenatti, 5 years later in a prison cell or something like that. That'll be kind of entertaining. But nonetheless, hopefully his career is just gone, done, over. It looks like it, and we don't have to hear anymore from this annoying human being who uses other people's suffering or big distraction stories to make a bunch of quick money, and then allegedly tries to extort companies like Nike. Which imagine the superiority complex that this guy has, that he thinks that he has the power to just be like, oh, I have some media coverage, so I'm going to come out against Nike and try and extort them. Yeah, that's going to work out very well. It's not like Nike isn't way more powerful and has way more ad campaigns behind it than you. Not justifying Nike's over-the-top power, but nonetheless, come on. Anyway, thanks for joining us again, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. All right, guys. So there's another report down, and let's see. We got some comments coming in here on YouTube. Make sure to press like on the video. It helps a lot. It pushes us up in the algorithm as we are heavily shadow banned. And as I have mentioned multiple times before, make sure to check out our Subscribestar page. It helps a lot as well. It makes it a lot easier to reach people, especially as we are so heavily demonetized, censored, and shadow banned. So they're not even allowing our viewers to see us anymore. It's just so over the top crazy. So that's subscribestar.com/world-alternative-media, and it is linked below, or at least should be. Anyway, so we are going to be getting into a couple more stories here. I kind of pick them as I go. I don't really know what I'm going to do ahead of time. I just kind of go for it. So yeah, anyway, I see James Cephas says, Josh, you should do a video exposing the pharmaceutical industry. I have done multiple of those. I am going to get into it further in the near future. And I also am doing subscriber-only content on Subscribestar. And JRM O'Brien says, chat is dead. Someone say stuff. That is true. Someone say stuff. We got 63 out of 115,000 people watching, and we got no people commenting in the chat, which isn't helping us, move here. We need some comments stuff. Super chats go to the top. I am going to do another story here. I just got to load it up, and I don't know what I'm going to do until I do it, but when I do it, I shall be off, and hopefully it all works out without any stutters or, any problems, which you never know. It's a live show, so we shall see what happens. But anyway, let's see. I think it would be fun to do a Canadian story. I got a couple here. So yeah, we'll do something on that, and we'll see what happens next. I want to try and hurry it up because I got meetings soon. It is 3:26 p.m. Central Time, and okay, all right. Let's get to this. I got lots of interviews, and I'm doing videos with John Snyson tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I am going to load this up and get it ready to go, and I think this will be a funny story, so don't go anywhere. Anyway, let's do this. And again, don't go anywhere after I cut this report off. I'm not going anywhere. I'll take your questions. I'm just cutting off the report so I can cut it out later and repost it as for a full report, because it saves me a lot of time and gets me makes me able to post lots more content. Anyway, Let's get down to this. All right, as this story out of Global News says, Trudeau says Wilson Raybould, Philpott are welcome to run as Liberals in federal election, and this comes as hilarious propaganda pieces are being pushed forward at the peak of this massive controversy involving Justin Trudeau. And the SNC-Lavalin scandal, which is minor compared to many of the other things he says, but nonetheless, after Wilson Raybould came out and testified against him as he was pushing to save SNC-Lavalin from major charges regarding things that they did in Libya and elsewhere, because it's in Quebec, in his riding, he wanted to save his riding, he wanted to save himself in the next election because he didn't want jobs to flee from the area. More dirty stuff by politicians. That's kind of their job, guys. That is the job of a politician as an organized criminal, especially someone like scumbag Justin Trudeau. Finally, my yelling at him in his face a couple years ago, people are starting to realize why I did it and what kind of person he is. But anyway, as this article says, commentary, Justin Trudeau needs to remove Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott from caucus. Hilarious. Tasha Curidan, as it shows, is a writer of this article. This is a good old-fashioned propaganda piece, veiled as commentary, the usual stuff. As the article says, how much longer will Prime Minister Justin Trudeau allow Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott to remain in the federal Liberal caucus? In Ottawa, that question dominates the conversation, from cocktail parties to cab rides. It started after Philpott's extraordinary sortie in Maclean's, where she said that there's much more to the story that needs to be told. It reached a boiling point when Wilson Raybould promised to provide copies of text messages and emails to the Justice Committee that would further clarify statements I made to elucidate the accuracy and nature of statements by witnesses in testimony that came after the committee appearances. What's next? People are asking. A tell-all on the National? Oh, yeah, that's great. A tell-all. I'm sure they'll tell all on the CBC, state-run media propaganda corporation. Anyway, it's almost as though the two women are daring Trudeau to expel them, daring him to repudiate his status as a champion of feminism, Indigenous rights, and doing politics differently. It's as if they're daring him to act like any other leader, Stephen Harper, Jean Chrétien, or his father, the late Pierre Trudeau, would have done and assert his authority over wayward MPs. It's not like Trudeau hasn't done that before. In 2014, he took a number of decisive actions. In November of that year, when Liberal MPs Massimo Passetti and Scott Andrews were accused of sexual misconduct by two NDP MPs, Trudeau expelled them from caucus without hesitation or any semblance of due process, which is funny because, people have accused Justin Trudeau of similar things. Is he going to expel himself? Probably not. In May, Trudeau issued a fatwa against any MP or aspiring candidate who didn't support abortion rights by denying them the opportunity to run for the party. And in January, Trudeau expelled 32 members of the Senate from the Liberal caucus for no other reason than that they were Liberals and he wanted to take a stand in light of the Senate expenses scandal. Taken together, these acts burnished his feminist credentials, bolstered his doing things differently mantra, and cast him as decisive to boot. So why hesitate now? What is it that Trudeau fears? What do Wilson Raybould and Philpott know, or could they say, if he casts them out of caucus? Speculation runs rampant, but some scenarios appear more plausible than others. The main one is that SNC-Lavalin wasn't the starting point for the women's discontent, but only a convenient tipping point. The theory is that other issues, the government's failure to settle Indigenous land claims, the lack of material advancement on First Nations issues, are really what made them mad. They may have concluded that Trudeau's embrace of these causes was a fraud, mere virtue signaling for votes, and they weren't going to take it anymore. It is interesting to note that a spokesperson for new Attorney General David Lametti just confirmed that Wilson-Raybould's directives on First Nation litigation will be respected. 20 guidelines that profoundly change the way the Crown will prosecute Indigenous lawsuits, and which encourage settlement out of court. Okay, so I've had enough of this article. I want to mention something that it stands out here. It's that, and we've seen this before with Harper. Harper expelled MPs that thought differently from him, that criticized him, all that kind of stuff. This is politics in a nutshell. This push to expel people who differ in thought. And this is another example why government not only is organized crime and it's just a giant cartel that decides things for you, but that this representational government is nonsense, because when it comes down to it, these representatives represent massive ridings with a bunch of people who all think differently, and maybe they got the majority, maybe a little by little majority. But nonetheless, there's still a vast amount of people that didn't get their way and are being enforced at the point of a gun by the state to go by other people's rules, because other people's ideas are so good they require force. No, that's not a thing. Good ideas do not require force. But nonetheless, the idea that the crime boss can expel some of their henchmen from their seats, their chairs, their fancy chairs in some fancy hall where people debate what form of enslavement they want to enforce on the populace. It's more nonsense that also concludes that no, replacing the puppet isn't going to change the problem. This has been going on since ancient Greece, folks. This has been going on forever. When will people learn that government can't replace government, government can't cure government, cancer doesn't cure cancer, kerosene doesn't put out fire? Again and again and again I say this, and no one seems to listen except for some of you that watch us here at WAM. It's this issue of, religion, statism. These people are on their knees begging for the state to help them, and when the state does terrible things that are right out in the open, like we saw with SNC Lavalin, and this push to potentially just expel people who dare to differ from the views of their master rather than potentially the people that elected them, quote unquote. When we see that, people just go, oh yeah, but we need government to fix this problem. We need the politicians to fix this problem. We're so dependent. We're slaves. We want them to help us because we love the chains we revere so much. It's hard to free them from the chains we revere, as I believe Voltaire once said. And it's just so absurd, guys. This is people begging for the chapel, the state, the legislative building, begging while hugging the flag, the cross, going to the Sunday school courses of schools, watching the media, the televangelists, and singing the national anthem, the hymns, begging their religious overlords, the state, to help them and free them from the chains that state put on them in the first place. Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat for eternity. Well, maybe the next guy will change things up. Change, change, change. That has been the mantra of every single election campaign since the beginning of so-called democracy in ancient Greece. It has never worked. Thousands of years have gone by. We still haven't learned. And we always answer after a couple years, 4, 8, 5, whatever country you live in, or whatever amount of terms or size of the terms are. We always beg, well, maybe we'll fix it by doing this again and again and again and again. Why are my paychecks getting smaller? Why is my purchasing power diminishing? Why can't I afford things anymore? Why am I going broke? And why are there more regulations and rules and laws enforced on me? And why am I scared every time a cop is behind me while I'm driving down the street? Why do I feel uncomfortable when these guys look at me? Why am I unable to do this or that without potentially getting my kids kidnapped by the government? And why can't I just exchange goods for services without them extorting me? All this kind of stuff, all these questions are always seemingly met with, okay, well, maybe we'll change the puppet in power, quote unquote, not questioning this idea of power because we've been so indoctrinated over our entire life and conformed and normalized in our minds this idea of statism and government controlling us, collectivism, and it begets collectivism. You can cut 95% of that tumor off, folks, but you leave 5% left, and what do you think is going to happen? That tumor is going to continuously grow. Individual responsibility is the hallmark of freedom itself, and individual responsibility is the route that we should all be taking rather than begging for help from the state that always seems to restrict our free will, and they basically only benefit benefit from extorting people and pushing people into further servitude and dependence. The more in control they are of the populace, the better off they are. Of course they're going to push everything into that direction. Of course they're going to print money out of thin air and push everyone into debt. Of course they're going to push this idea that it's caring and fair to extort people more and put them into more servitude and control them more because it's fair and it's nice and it's the best. No. Imagine the mental gymnastics. Well, it's worked. And people have become so conformed to this ideology of statism that they just accept it. They've accepted it. They look at anything, any other ideas breaking outside of that box as horrible and just terrible and extremism. And it's not extremist to trust this entity that thinks it has a moral, a moral authority over us, despite killing hundreds of millions of people and extorting everyone, being the top thief in the world, the top kidnapper, the top polluter, all these things, and then they'll come in and stop thieves and kidnappers and murderers and polluters. When will we learn? Anyway, anything the government says, it's usually the opposite. I mean, what's fair to them is actually extortion, and what's, actually fair in reality to them is corruption. Take any small business, and as Trudeau says, poor people don't pay taxes. And as Trudeau says, small businesses are just shell corporations. Meanwhile, he has a bunch of shell corporations, and at the same time, he's never spent a second of his life poor because he's been on trust funds. This is why I called him a scumbag. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. All right, there's another report done. Let's see what we got here. JC, and I can't understand the foreign alphabet there. But statism, collectivism, socialism, occult. The conversation just scrolled up. Occult, religion of slavery. Absolutely true. That's exactly what we're dealing with. What do I see here? Oh, I got Full-Time Geek on here again. Okay. Anyway, I got lots of comments coming in. I'm glad to see. J.R.M. O'Brien. Yeah, Federal Reserve is neither federal or a reserve. Yeah, and on top of that, even if it was federal, it would still be centralizing the currency and enforcing it by legal tender laws. So, I mean, the fact that the Federal Reserve is private could be considered a problem, but I don't think it's a basis of the problem. I think the basis of the problem is centralizing currency, government enforcing these things on us by legal tender laws, by fiat, so to say, and pushing us into servitude that way. Let me just get to another story here because I do have it incorporated into the thumbnail. Again, I have to go soon because I do have a meeting shortly. So we'll try to get this done. But again, Super Chats go to the top and it allows us to reach all of you. And anyway, let's get to this. I'm just getting all of the articles up front here so it's ready to go. And we'll see how this goes. Again, could always go badly. That's an interesting thing about a live show. Anyway, let's do this. All right, so you might notice here that this article is a little bit old, September 13th, 2017. This isn't the article we will be going into today, but nonetheless, I want to use it as context because as this City News article said in 2017, Toronto police refused to acknowledge use of Stingray surveillance devices, and it just talks about this, Stingray surveillance mechanism that the police use in order to spy on people and get their data. Canada's Privacy Commissioner is expected to release the results of its investigation into the RCMP's use of Stingrays later this week. Stingrays are cell phone surveillance devices. They work by mimicking cell phone towers and capturing data from nearby devices. They have several different names: cell site simulators, International Mobile Subscriber Identity Catchers, IMSI, catcher, or mobile device identifiers, MDIS. But they all serve the same purpose: to surveil cell phone users in a given area. And I quote, I think we should be concerned because as law-abiding citizens, we have a right to privacy and freedom, and to go about where we wish to, communicate with whomever without fear of that our information is being intercepted, says Dr. Anne Kavukian, Ontario's former privacy commissioner. It's already been established that the RCMP and Ontario Provincial Police use the devices, and Correctional Services Canada has also been caught using them. And when asked, Calgary and Winnipeg police tell City News that they too use them. Despite repeated requests, Toronto police won't say whether or not they employ the devices. Well, there's some interesting, more recent stories that may change that a little bit. And, of course, this Vice News article from March 2018 says Canadian cops admit to using Stingray devices to track cell phones en masse. And it goes into this issue at large. But I want to get into the most recent story here out of the Star. Thousands of bystanders, as it says, caught in Toronto police sweep of cell phone data. March 24th, 2019. Okay, a little bit more recent. As the article goes into, Toronto police and RCMP officers deploying controversial Stingray surveillance technology over a 2-month period swept up identifying cell phone data on more than 20,000 bystanders at malls, public parks, and even children's toy stores. As police sought cell phone data for 11 suspects in a 2014 investigation, they deployed a Stingray, also known as an IMSI catcher, at 3 dozen locations, including the middle of Yorkville, at the Dufferin Mall, at Vaughan Mills Mall, near Trinity Bellwoods Park, near Kensington Market, and at a Toys R Us store in Richmond Hill. A Toys R Us store. Think about this infringement for a moment, folks. This is a serious problem because, look, first of all, they deny for all these years that they're doing this. Second of all, this is a government, this is a state, the organized crime racket, utilizing people's data, claiming that they're doing some kind of investigation as an excuse, and then going in and stealing people's data, looking at people's data, extorting people of their data, their privacy, the things that they're doing, the text messages they do, and as people like Edward Snowden has noted before, they're dick pics. Yes, it's not the first time you've heard this. I'm sure the government has a whole lot of your pictures that you've sent over the years. Look, this is a serious problem because not only is it that the state is stealing your information and they just seem to get away with it because who is going to hold the state accountable? The state? What is most important about this going forward is with the implementation of the inefficient, coercive 5G technology. Now you're going to see with these hubs in front of every single house and everywhere you go, this massive web, this massive, I don't know what you would call it, just digital web, collecting information at a much greater rate while artificial intelligence, facial recognition is pushed to the forefront, as we've seen in places like China with social credit scores, people breaking the law by walking slightly diagonal on the street when there's no cars around, jaywalking or whatever you want to call it, getting their face put on big billboards on the street, shaming them, and a text message sent to their phone automatically through facial recognition technology that just automatically sends them information. Or police in China walking around with goggles on that have facial recognition and social credit scores built into the lens so that they could see as they're looking around who people are, where their background is, etc., etc. This is the technocratic super state that we've been warning about, and we were called crazy for warning about for so many years. But here we have it, folks. Another example, and people might say it's minor. It's really not minor when you're collecting minors' information and some creepy guy in the state is looking at that information. Look, as this continues to develop, as we see government collecting our information, as we see this slow incremental frog boil to normalize the stealing of information, we have to realize this is the state that's doing it, the most coercive entity on the planet, the entity that has killed more than anyone in all of human history, polluted more, also stolen more, because that's their job. That's the only way they benefit is by stealing your money and pushing you into control, kidnapping, and doing all sorts of crazy experiments that have killed so many people over history and destroyed so many lives and destroying market innovation, pushing people into poverty, because if they're in poverty and in debt, they are in servitude to the state. This is huge. Now, as far as privacy goes, now, individuals only have a right to that which they defend. Otherwise, they give it up willingly, because it's up to the individual responsibility of the individual to defend their individual liberties. They only have it as long as they defend it. Otherwise, they do not have them. Nothing is intrinsic in life. It's only protected, defended. And defense is the hallmark of responsibility, which is a hallmark of freedom. So as far as privacy goes, if an individual walks down the street and is on so-called public property, or at least not on your property, and looks in your window and you have your blinds open and you're changing in front of the window, as creepy as it might be for him to start staring, it's not an infringement as much as it is just you being irresponsible. Though, of course, there's creepy people out there, and you see fit in doing whatever you wish to certain people that are creepy and do creepy things to other people, including looking in people's windows. Once they're on your property, that becomes an infringement of property rights, but that is only defended by your individual responsibility. Anyway, breaking free from that, we're talking about the state. The state is an entity of organized crime, a coercive entity that only privileges itself by stealing your money, extorting you, and forcing its rule on you by the collective, because collective cheerleaders decide your fate in a so-called election. So, and yes, we're going into anarchy, we're going into voluntarism, etc. That is where it differs. You have a giant organized crime racket stealing your information. So what are you going to do about it, folks? What are you going to do? Are you going to get angry at this video and then sit back and do nothing just knowing about it? Or are you going to say something? Are you going to do something? Of course, non-violently, but are you going to do something to demand an end to this? And while you're at it, you cut 95% of a tumor off, you still leave 5%. Are you going to leave that 5% left? Because what do you think is going to happen? It's going to grow. What are people going to do about it? It comes down to individuals like you taking some sort of action in order to defend yourself, your privacy, and make those moves in order to protect yourself and protect your family going down the line as well. We've allowed this to normalize by thinking that, oh, maybe a protest will work. Oh, maybe, maybe we'll just talk to our local representative. Like, that representative totally is fair and square because, a majority of this riding has elected them. Meanwhile, the other 49% are extorted, and that rule is enforced on them because other people decided what's great for everyone. And, it's the usual stuff that I talk about. Good ideas do not require force. Anyway, so what are we going to do about this? And this is a question I ask so often. How do we demonstrate freedom? How do we demonstrate responsibility? Because as the government is stealing children's information, stealing your information, 20,000 people unnamed, unlisted, who knows what kind of information they have? Who knows one day when they get rid of all these warrants and all this stuff that's inconvenient to them, who knows what kind of information they will use from these days of information collecting? You realize that someday certain things are going to be prohibited, some things are going to require lower social credit scores. I know I'm going to get it one day, where I'm going to get a really bad social credit score for criticizing the government, and then I won't be able to travel and all that kind of stuff. What are we doing about it? Why are we standing here and watching this happen? One day, this information will be used against us. Maybe not today, maybe not legally tomorrow, but someday. And are you willing to take that risk? Are you willing to just sit back and go, yeah, well, that's in the future. Well, that future may come onto your doorstep very, very soon. And then we're going to have a major quandary to deal with. So these dishonest henchmen that are stealing your information and using it for whatever they want while claiming it's for an investigation, they are a major, major problem going forward for all of you. And it's about time you look at places like China, which has been propped up, going back to Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong, and then moving into Zbigniew Brzezinski's creation of the Trilateral Commission to push China as the new empire, which it's set to overtake the United States alongside India as well in the coming years. What are you going to do about it? I think that's enough for you to maybe take some action. I'm not going to tell anyone what they can or cannot or should not do. But with that said, I thought I'd just give you some food for thought there. And you can make your own decisions and decide what is best. moving forward as this entity, this coercive entity, uses you to sacrifice as a pawn for the king and the queen. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. All right. There's another report done. What do we got here? Liza Jean Williams says, was Russiagate a cover-up for Chinagate? You know, that's an interesting question because I find that there is a huge problem when it comes to, you know, the hypocrisy of, well, it's all Russia. We need to go after Russia. We need to cause problems with Russia, potentially create a massive world war. But then, on top of that, it's suddenly like, we'll just ignore, you know, all the collusion with China. As I mentioned in the last report there, the collusion with China, collusion with Saudi Arabia. And in the end, it's organized crime bosses and crime cartels colluding with each other at the risk of our life and limb, at the risk of any individual liberties we might have left that we have defended against this beast, this behemoth of statism. So, yeah, it's sad. Anyway, let me see here. I got some comments here, and it appears, let me see here. Oh, I got, oh, great. Well, thank you, Full-Time Geek, for sending $10. I appreciate that in the super chats. Interesting. You tend to troll me quite often, so that's interesting. Crypto Futures sent $10 in the super chat as well. Can we make that interview happen? I have proof, and I have been experiencing trouble from the material for over 1 year, the material that they have put in front of the sun. I will do my best, man. I want to. I have been looking into this issue, and it is a real issue that is actually affecting a lot of people. I do need to do more research, but at the same time, I'm also traveling, running around, and I got every day booked up tight. In fact, I got a meeting very shortly tonight that I have to get to very soon. But I'm definitely into getting into that and hopefully interviewing you on that subject matter. So absolutely just keep in touch, and we will get to that as soon as we can. Anyway, I want to get into another report here quickly. Oh wait, Rebel Glory. Josh, as an ANCAP, you sound completely radicalized, ideologically possessed in the right way. Laughs. I love it. Keep going, bro. I was wondering where you're going with that. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's radical to just be using common sense and logic because people are so caught up in the emotion of statism, right? It's a weird quandary to be in because it's like everyone's like, you sound crazy, and it's like, well, I feel normal. Everyone else seems crazy to me. But, you know, I'm just going by, we shouldn't use force against other people and enslave people. Is that so crazy? At one time, everyone loved the idea of, you know, the blacks being slaves for centuries. And they thought anyone that spoke out against it was a threat to them and was horrible. Meanwhile, automation actually solved all of the problems that those business owners thought and the slave owners thought they had. But it was so crazy. It's the same thing as the world is flat. And one guy's like, no, actually the world is a globe. And, oh, let's potentially threaten to kill him and all this kind of stuff and cause all these problems. And everyone that says this is crazy. They should probably talk to the Mayans about that, knowing that they knew latitude and explain latitude, flat earthers. Anyway, I really don't want to go into that. But Really Cold says, is the Red River going to flood? A Winnipegger has the right name. Really Cold. That's an interesting name and very much correct for a Winnipegger. Is the Red River going to flood? I don't know. I do not know. I'm very close to the river right now, so I certainly hope not. So my basement doesn't get flooded. Anyway, we'll see. It's not, I mean, I understand some people are worried about their livelihoods, and a lot of people have to get insurance for that and all that. But it's not really an international story I really want to get too much into here. It's not important on the wide scale. But let me see. I got an article here that I wanted to report on. And let's see what we got here. I got to get it up on the screen. I have not read the article yet, but I know of the issue. The issue at hand is something that's very close to me because I've been studying it as far back as I can remember. If you hear any sound background noise, guys, let me know. My laptop currently, because I'm live for some reason, it's making this loud fan noise, and it shouldn't be. So hopefully that isn't in the way. But anyway, some guy the other day is like, you have terrible audio. You just hear this buzzing noise. I'm like, no, you don't. I look at it. It's like, oh, it's my computer fan. Great. Good to know. Anyway, let's get to the other report. And again, for those that just tuned in, I'm not signing out from this whole video once I finish the report. I'm doing this report, cutting it out later, posting it as a separate report after the live stream. So once I close it off, don't go anywhere. I'm still here to take your questions, etc. Super chats, again, go to the top, and it allows us to reach people and see your comments far more likely and helps us stay alive as we're so heavily shadow banned. But anyway, let's get to the next story here. All right. Are we running out of gold? This is an interesting story out of Zero Hedge that I came across, and I wanted to go into this and elaborate a little bit, but anyway, I want to go into what it says here first. As it says, gold has been used for jewelry and currency for thousands of years. It has always served as a source of status and wealth. The reason for its popularity is its rarity. Gold is a finite commodity. There is only so much of the golden metal available, and it can't be manufactured. And I should add, it could technically be manufactured, but it costs more to manufacture it than it is to sell that amount. So, and it's not really good. It's not efficient. Maybe someday, and that's an issue. But nonetheless, yes, I mean, the value of gold comes from its scarcity. Scarcity, application, use, and demand, the subjectivity of value, which I will go into later on in the video. But anyway, carrying on here, it says, some experts, including Goldcorp's chairman Ian Telfer, are predicting that the amount of future gold to be mined is already on the decline. The fact that gold mining is on the decline is nothing new. This has happened before. What is worrying some investors is that the world may be running out of physical gold. I would not be too concerned about that personally, and I'll explain in a bit, but just to simplify it, when you have less gold, when you have a deficit in gold, the value of gold is going to go up. There's not that much gold in the world. It's very scarce, and that's what brings it, part of what brings it so much value. And you can see this chart here, gold discoveries versus exploration expenditure. And moving on here, should investors be worried, it says. And as it says, the discovery of new gold deposits has been declining while mining companies are spending more money on exploration for new sites. Most of the newly found deposits have been small and expensive to extract. No high-grade deposits with at least 5 million ounces of gold or world-class deposits have been found in a long time. These world-class deposits have yielded more than 50% of today's available gold. What little is being extracted is becoming costly to obtain. Many deposits are producing 1.4 grams of gold per ton as compared to 10 grams in the 70s. Mining companies are struggling. Many have merged to offset decreasing profits and declining gold supply. The gold industry has been witnessing a wave of mergers over the past few months as producers battle poor returns and diminishing reserves. In March of this year, Barrick Gold, the world's second largest gold producer, and Newmont Mining agreed on a joint venture in Nevada instead of Barrick Gold buying Newmont Mining outright. Newmont Mining acquired Goldcorp earlier this year in an effort at developing greater and more economical resources. Barrick Gold believes that Nevada still has plenty of gold, perhaps 76 million ounces. I just came from Nevada. It's huge. The gold exploration industry is getting a bit bigger over the last little while out there, and I've done interviews with some of the miners. Anyway, going back into the article, it says, according to mining analyst John Ng, it may be cheaper to buy another gold mining company than explore for new gold. This opinion is seconded by analyst Ryan Hanley of Laurentian Bank Securities, who claims that the time and cost of gold exploration makes mergers a more profitable proposition for these majors. The real problem is not the lack of gold, but the current price of gold. The price of gold has been holding at around $1,300 an ounce, down from its high of $1,800 an ounce, again, US dollars, in 2012. However, with peak gold in sight, we anticipate the price of gold to elevate, so more exploration dollars can be allocated. The amount of money mining companies have allocated for new explorations has declined from a high of $21 billion in 2012 to $10.1 billion in 2018. It's a half. That's interesting. While global economies are currently presenting a strong picture, it is anticipated that economic growth will slow down globally. This could very well see the price of gold climbing to $1,300 an ounce, its highest level since 2013. A rise in gold prices is very likely with geopolitical and recession risks to coincide with peak gold. So I do want to add to this story here. Let's talk about for a second the recession indicators of the yield curve inversion that we are seeing, and we saw this 3 months ago as well at a smaller scale, and we haven't seen that really since 2007, and we've been warning about this for a couple years now at WAM, and again, fear-mongering, says everyone, until it happens, because it's just basic economics. It's nothing, new or crazy. It's just the basics. It's been pushed off longer than it could possibly have been pushed off in the past, and it's propped up a system that is built to fail, and eventually has to, as all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. Always have, always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. But again, looking at gold has been held like a beach ball underwater, pushing it down with pressure gaining all the time. And you can only imagine once the bankrupt banking system, which has incredibly low cash to deposit ratios, fails eventually, and it has to fail. No idea when, but it will eventually, and it can't be pushed off too much longer. It should have happened already. But once that happens, they're pushing down gold will relent, and we will see gold likely skyrocket massively, as we have seen historically. Preservation of value, wealth insurance, not meant as investment advice, and it's not even really an investment. And of course, you can check out our affiliate with Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com linked below. But anyway, I do want to add to the idea of, look, the scarcity of gold is dramatically important for the value of gold. Gold can only be created with supernovas, or has in the past, historically. What we've seen in the past, the massive explosions that have created this precious metal. And again, scarcity. It's scarce. There's not a lot of it. There's a deficit on the horizon too, which shows a more bullish market long term for gold. And when people are scrambling over it, and there's so much demand and there's so much application needs, as we've seen, then of course the value is going to go up. And the value versus the price of living, I might add, once the dollar is gone, we won't be basing it on US dollars. We'll be basing it on itself versus the price of living, how much it buys, its purchasing power, which people seem to not get, which is really strange. And again, you can't eat gold, though. I mean, you could eat a little bit of gold. I'm sure you could be fine by doing that, but not the point. Gold is part of the solution, not the entirety of the solution. And as people like Leora Gant said in a recent interview we did with him, it's just as bad to own only gold as it is to not own any gold at all. Diversification of your portfolio is incredibly important, especially long-term as we head into this recession, which is highly indicated and very plausible with the everything bubble worldwide as well, and this massive amount of debt, which can't go anywhere but a complete collision course. So, scarcity, application use, demand. Subjectivity of value. Gold doesn't have physical value. Physicality plays into its application use because it can be used for physical means. However, it is, because again, there's no such thing as intrinsic as defined as intrinsic, where it's just magically there. There's a number floating above it. This is how much you can buy with it. It's based on what people will use it for, sell it for, buy it for, what people will trade for it, or vice versa. So, again, this is something that is highly misunderstood, but value is subjective. But like if you look at a monkey or a giraffe, might not be able to use gold for the same thing as you, and you go into these places that have been colonized in Africa, for example, and South America, the colonists come and they say, we want your pearls. And they say, well, we don't want these pearls. So sure, give us like almost nothing scraps for them. And then they go off and sell it for much more because some people see value in it, other people don't. Well, most people do see value in gold. Nonetheless, if not everyone just naturally believes in gold, then it's no longer defined as intrinsic. It's subjective. But with that said, historically, gold and silver have been incredibly prevalent, and we're seeing the peak of gold-silver ratio again, as we've seen before in past crashes. So the potential going forward is massive and huge and great, and something people have to be watching, keeping their eyes on, and hopefully preserving their purchasing power with, if that is what they want to do. So scarcity is the major issue at hand here, and with scarcity comes, especially if you pair it with demand, scarcity and demand combined, then, and mainstream demand at that, you will see the value go up. People put bigger values on that which is scarce and in demand at the same time. There's a deficit. And then the application use is added to that, and with silver and copper as well, which we've gone into in recent days. Copper is facing a deficit, and yet there's huge demand, and going into the green, future that's been being pushed forward on us by like the United Nations and all these multinational conglomerates around the world. As this stuff is pushed on us, well, will you look at that? The value is going to go up. I mean, it kind of has to. Deficit versus demand. So I think that we see so many uses, application uses, paired with this scarcity and demand, that it's looking very good down the line. While it's not looking so good for the US dollar, what's wrong with the US dollar isn't necessarily that it's not physical. It's the fact that it's based on faith, which people can easily lose when the charade ends, when people realize that they just print vast amounts of quantitative easing. There's fractional reserve lendings, in some cases zero reserve policies that destroy the value. And the worst part, this is the worst part of the centralized currency, is that it is forced on us by legal tender laws that then enslave us to the usury that we never signed a contract on. It's just enforced. You have no choice, and then you end up paying off the interest on the debt, which makes you, again, another slave of the banking system and government. The banks are coursing against us by using this legal tender law system to create vast amounts of fake currency, and then it comes down on us and we pay vast amounts of taxes, or aka extortion fees, to pay off the interest on the debt. Everyone says, well, what about my roads? 0.5 to 1% of the municipal budget on average. Roads, that is what the interest on the debt in the military-industrial complex, that is what you should be most worried about, because they're stealing your money for those reasons, and the government only benefits if people are more in servitude and their money is stolen and they are more in debt, more impoverished, and more begging on their knees for help and any leg up that they can get from this organized crime racket. So we need to understand value. We need to take control of our money, because if we have control of our money, because we're educated on money, if we have control of our money, then we control ourselves. We control our own fate. If they have control over our money, then we are enslaved to those who control our money, those who create the money, those who enforce our money by fiat, by legal tender laws on you. What are you going to do about it, folks? Are you going to be responsible and break free from it? Are you going to, protect your purchasing power? It goes further than just gold and silver. There's cryptocurrencies that, if properly decentralized and properly valuable or fundamentally valuable going long term, as well as a blockchain infrastructure that's properly decentralized long term, going forward, useful, then that's great diversification alongside individual responsibility, alongside as many assets as you can, get out of cash if you can, and on top of that, and by cash I mean fiat US dollars, but on top of that, you also have, food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And, of course, you just gotta be self-sustainable and responsible. Self-sustainable and responsible, independent. Don't be dependent on this organized crime racket that uses you to sacrifice you to the king for the king and the queen as the pawn that you are made to be. Don't revere those chains. Break free from those chains. Be an individual, not part of this collective echo chamber, this zombified public. Break free, rule yourself, decentralize everything, and stop being dependent on the entity that creates Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution for eternity. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's been going on for thousands of years, and people don't seem to learn. And we're coming up on the 1,000th year anniversary, 1024 AD in China, of fiat currencies. What have we learned? I hope a bit more nowadays in the age of information. Nonetheless, protect yourselves, folks. Again, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. All right. Okay. We are back to the chat. Make sure to press a like on the video. But people are talking about usury, and usury is, well, first of all, people, it's not bad to utilize some kind of interest on payments overall if you voluntarily decide that. You get a loan and you say, yes, I want, I agree to, this interest rate, or, you charging me interest on this loan. Why they want some kind of collateral, they want something in exchange. But then you have the government enforcing usury on you, which is incredibly coercive and destructive to free will. I mean, that's a totally different situation. Usury is bad when it's enforced on people, just as anything else. If it's not enforced, if it's not aggressed upon you, if it's not used against your will, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the individual demand of the public will decide many of these things for themselves on the market, decide as you, as an individual, or a company or whatever, do you have value as an individual? Because you are a product on the market. People will either want to see more of you or not want to see any of you. People will like you or they won't like you. Subjectivity of value, look at that. So anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. It's been, again, I said it's going to be a shorter show. Has not turned out to be, and I do have a meeting right away. So I need to get to that immediately. So I really appreciate everyone tuning in. I want to give everyone the heads up on this. This is our Bitcoin address. Help us out in any way you can. We really appreciate it. You make it possible for us to survive, as we are so incredibly shadow banned lately. Again, we're seeing 66 people watching out of 115,000 people. We really appreciate the 66 people that have been able to catch us, because they're not really showing us to people. They're not really allowing people to see us. They're showing our videos to 1 to 3% of our audience. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we can't do it without your help. We can't break free from this. And it's life or death right now for independent media. We also have a subscribe star page, which I shall put up on the screen right here. So make sure to check that out as well. We will be doing subscriber only content on Subscribe Star that's not safe for YouTube, quote unquote. So if you want to sign up for that, it's $4.99 US a month to get that subscriber only content. We really appreciate it. We need to find ways to break free from the YouTube cartel that we've been dealing with. And it is kind of a cartel. So anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. For real this time, we're actually ending the live stream. Find the truth, be the change.